My name is Kycell, and as I write this 25th chapter of the Forgotten Minotaur King, I mulled over the encroaching war on my doorstep. Having the rest of my night in the Palamedes University dorm to mull over the news of an encroaching attack, I spent most of that following night quite restless. Myrink's information she gathered as a secret undercover guard both put my mind at ease regarding her, my other companion, Ahani, and my own safety during our incursion in the Mendes Castle, while still instilling dread of a potential war coming to Merkind's otherwise idyllic kingdom of Goldenarod. The mouseling diplomat from the country of Andron, this Aksor Chungus, was a blessing and a curse. But then the detail of his spouse being Myrink's own sister was mildly upsetting as well, despite the fact seeming pretty unimportant to Myrink herself, as her sister wasn't under suspicion of betrayal. The Regelisad forces occupying the castle hadn't shown themselves to be kind, discerning, nor forgiving in the past, having murdered innocent people even tangentially related to those that drew their anger. The scheme of Aksor's to rescue the mouseling citizens from the nearby port city of Scalamandre and the nebulous Andron forces set to retaliate on word of his capture would just have to fade to the back of my mind for the time being. The journal of Prince Jadeniston Journal and my occupation in the castle library would have to remain my top priority, as it all pertained to my work on the Forgotten Minotaur King tome. I wrote down all of my developments so far during our infiltration, and awoke a dozing Ahani to review my biographing in her absence as stenographer. I was aware the dwarves she was being forced to labor alongside during her role in the Mendes occupation was draining, but I assured her it would be all worth it if we could complete my work. As Myrink and our hosts, Silibin and Estelise, rested for the night, Ahani read my work, and I returned to the journal of Jadeniston and his battle with Krunturg. Despite his large and ferocious appearance, upon his wounding by the Minotaur King Krunturg, Jadeniston clambered in his seated position away from the encroaching brute. Krunturg felt no sympathy for the large, tiger-like Rakshasa prince cowering before him, but once the humiliated prince gurgled out a plea for mercy in exchange for detailed information regarding this seeming coup and attempt on his life by the traitor Minotaur the Man-Reaper.
I promise you, King, I can tell you everything. Just spare me. Kill the Reaper if you must.
Krunturg mulled over the foreign prince's words, while attempting to keep an ear out for his squire, the Young Kind, who he had left to battle the Man-Reaper as he consulted with Jadeniston. Aiming his crag hammer at the white tiger, who still clutched his weeping neck and rib wounds, Krunturg bellowed out an order for the prince to start talking. Kind slid across the floor and hid behind the upturned armchair Jadeniston had hurled him into. He chastised himself for being disarmed of his sword and hammer by the Rakshasa. He knew that if he made it out of this alive, his father, Vam, nor his master Krunturg would let him hear the end of it. he heard the heavy hoof falls of the Man Reaper, who had somehow recovered, and Kind could assume had rearmed himself with Kind's own weapons.
Come on out, little calf. I already told you. I'm gonna finish you off. Then I'm gonna go deal with your daddy in Goldenrod.
The Man Reaper brayed with laughter, which sent a bristle of anger all the way through Kind's mane. Leaping from his hiding space, he rushed the Man Reaper, just as he had watched his master perform a number of times, head down, horns forward, with intent to kill. Unfortunately for Kind, the Man Reaper reacted in the nick of time and brought the cord-blessed sword of their people down on the young Minotaur's head. Kind, turning at the last possible moment, instead of catching it to his forehead, the sword was lodged in the crook of his horns. Losing his grip, weakened due to the many debilitating wounds he was now fighting through, the Reaper lost the sword belonging to Kind and found himself being lifted from around the waist and hoisted into the air by this young calf of a squire. Before he knew it, his now hornless skull was brought down on the concrete flooring of the shack, and everything went dark. Krunturg ruminated on the plot Jadeniston laid out before him. The Regelisad came to him, planning to use him or else kill and replace him. He didn't even know who these people were before today. The servant and Princess Darlessa were in on this scheme as well. He smiled to himself when mulling over his near last-minute decision to not bring Darlessa along to this battle. He turned back to the Regelisad prince, who was still on his knees before him. He told Jadeniston that he was now a prisoner of Kind and himself. The prince blanched at the thought.
If I must, I say, you seem more civilized than your kind typically are. If I didn't know better, I'd say you actually were worthy of leading a country. Not one that rightfully is ours, but still.
Krunturg ignored the petty jibes from the beaten prince, looking past the now kneeling noble and into the shack Kind and the Reaper were doing battle in. After hearing what sounded like an overripe melon smashing against the stone, Krunturg halted, hoping to cord it wasn't the sound of Kind's death. Seeing the momentary lapse in attention, Jadeniston pounced like his primeval kin would a grazing herd animal, shoving his whole weight onto Krunturg and wrapping both arms and legs around the king. Angered, but not surprised, Krunturg locked eyes with the prince as the Rakshasa once again began preparing to store magical energy intended to kill Krunturg. But all the prince let out was a yelp of pain as a squire with a sword and hammer in hand pierced the wound Krunturg had given the Rakshasa moments ago. With a simple flexing gesture, Krunturg unbalanced the prince and freed himself, once again retreating to a pleading gesture. Krunturg and Kind simply stared, as Krunturg hefted his hefty crag hammer and with a single blow, filled with anger and betrayal, decapitated Prince Jadeniston Regelisad. Putting an arm on his squire's shoulder, they began their journey home. That was one Regelisad down. Now, a full royal family to go. I sat on the dorm floor, swaddled in blankets, absolutely stunned. Having finished cessation CCCXXIII of Jadeniston's Journal, I turned to the next page, Existence CCCXXII, confused for a few moments, as it detailed, in an uncomfortably accurate description, being born in a jungle shack to a family of tree-dwelling Nekomata, a rare and dying cat-like race in the borders of Kintsugi, only discernible from Alexandrian catfolk by their distinct twin prehensile tails. This must be the reincarnation the Rajalasad family is rumored to possess, but in action. I read on, but it simply went on to describe the short time he spent with these Nekomata, pretending to be one of their own, until he could secure travel back to the Rajalasad Empire, but losing this short life in cessation CCCXXIII to a house fire set by some parental figure's spurned lover. Picking up next in the heart of the empire to a slightly more well-off family. However, sometime after that the journal ended, and it somehow made its way to my draconid companion Chinook at the library. This was a mystery I would need to solve when I returned the journal to him tomorrow. In the meantime, I finally settled in for the night, dreaming of what deadly fate awaited our group in the future. The following morning, I reperformed the disguise spell, as it seemingly wore off all three of us during the night. The forms we took returned identically once again, and we headed off to the Mindus Castle. Myrink kept her head on a swivel as we traveled through the kingdom. She told Ahani and myself that she was certain there were more people in the town than usual, and many faces she didn't recognize. We tried to reassure her that there was no possible way she would know every single citizen in this considerably sized kingdom after the few days we spent here, but her paranoia continued as we entered the courtyard of the castle. She split from our group, but not before reassuring us that she would do her damnedest to get information on Kind's kidnapped son, as well as the babysitter. I felt a deep shame that both had nearly left my memory in these trying times. As Ahani and I continued, I saw an incredibly panicked and harried Chinook pacing by a post reserved for incoming coaches and wagons. I waved Ahani to continue toward the blacksmithery, assuring her I'd meet her after the day was ended. I approached Chinook, who was beating his small wings in an anxious fidget. Tapping him on the shoulder and presenting the journal, I explained that I found it outside of the dungeon, just past where the ogre guards the portcullis.
Oh, that oaf of an ogre does have it out for me, I knew it. Must have hidden it to get me in trouble. Wait until Lord Carnager finds out about this. Oh, and JR.
I suddenly felt awful. My false explanation wasn't meant to get that ogre guard in trouble. I attempted to clarify, but my voice was drowned out by the cacophonous sound of a large luxury carriage being pulled by lanky, muscular Catoblopos beasts of burden. Stopping right at the post Chinook and I were loitering at, the door to the carriage swung open, and off stepped an enormous orange tiger-like Rakshasa, wearing clothes typical of a servant. Stepping to the side and holding his burly arm out in presentation, The next person to exit the carriage was a disinterested-looking, black-furred, youthful catfolk.
Oh, speaking of JR, Kycell, meet my old friend, Prince Jadeniston Journal.
Hi, my name is Matthew Lewis, and I do the voice of Kycell Bakshi, along with all the additional voices in The Forgotten Minotaur King. I hope you enjoy the podcast and continue to listen into the future. If you want to support my content, please donate to my Patreon, Matthew Lewis Podcasts. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, Matthew Lewis Podcasts, all one word. Follow me on Twitter at Matthew Lewis P. Or leave a positive maximum star review on your podcast app of choice. If you found this podcast, I assume you're familiar enough with the genre to know how important reviews are to the survival of a channel. And I hope you recommend this to your friends. Or if you didn't like it, you could recommend it to your enemies, and I'll teach them a lesson. Keep it sleazy, folks, and thank you.